The palace of Zaria was a place of golden whispers. Prince Zaria stood by the arched window, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. But his mind was far from the beauty of the horizon. His chest tightened with a question he could no longer ignore. Did they love him, or did they love the crown? 3 wives shared his life, his bed, his riches, but did they share his heart? The first, Leora, was gentle as morning dew, her words always sweet, her touch always warm. The second, Nalini, was fire wrapped in silk, bold, ambitious, her laughter ringing louder than temple bells. The third, Eshe, was quiet as shadows, her eyes holding secrets even he couldn't unravel. A servant rushed in, bowing low. "My prince, the council awaits your decision on the northern lands." Zara waved him away. Lands, taxes, treaties, none of it mattered today. Only the gnawing in his soul did. That night, as the palace slept, he summoned his most trusted guard. "I need you to spread a lie," he murmured, "one that will shake the very foundations of this kingdom." The guard's eyes widened as the prince revealed his plan. Prince Zaria must die. Not truly, of course, but enough to test the hearts of those who claim to love him. Enough to see who would weep and who would rejoice. The next morning, the palace awoke to screams. A servant found the prince's chambers empty, his bed stained with what looked like blood. The royal physician emerged, face ashen, and uttered the unthinkable. "The prince is no more." The words spread like wildfire. By noon, the entire kingdom of Zaria trembled with the news. Their beloved prince, struck down by an assassin's blade in the dead of night. The streets filled with wailing, the markets closed in mourning, and the palace guards stood stiff with shock. But the loudest cries came from the prince's private chambers, where his 3 wives received the news. Leora collapsed to her knees, her delicate hands covering her face as sobs racked her body. "No, no, this cannot be." Her grief was raw, unfiltered, as if her very soul had been torn in two. Nalini's reaction was different. She stood frozen, her sharp eyes darting, first to the physician, then to the door, then to the chest where the prince kept his most valuable jewels. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Who did this?" she demanded, voice colder than winter stone. As she did not weep, she did not speak. She simply turned away, her face unreadable, and walked to the window, staring out as if waiting for something or someone. Unseen, hidden behind a secret panel in the wall, Prince Zaria watched them all. His heart pounded. This was the test. Who would prove true? Who would betray him? And who, in the end, truly loved him? The palace was draped in black. Mourners filled the halls, their cries echoing off the marble walls. The prince's body was nowhere to be found. His guards claimed assassins had taken it to hide their crime. But the kingdom grieved all the same. Behind closed doors, however, the prince's 3 wives began to reveal their true hearts. Leora. The devoted. Leora refused to eat. She sat by the empty bed where her husband had last lain, clutching his cloak to her chest, whispering prayers to the gods. Servants begged her to rest, but she shook her head, tears never ceasing. "I cannot," she murmured, "not until I see him one last time." When the royal council gathered to discuss the future of the throne, Leora did not attend. "What is a kingdom without its heart?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I have lost more than a prince. I have lost my love." Nalini, the ambitious. Nalini wasted no time. Within hours of the prince's death, she summoned the treasurer. "The prince's will must be reviewed at once," she declared, "and his personal vaults. Who holds the keys?" When the treasurer hesitated, her eyes turned to steel. "Do not forget who may soon rule in his place." That night she met secretly with a wealthy merchant from a neighboring kingdom, her voice low but firm. "The prince's trade agreements can still be honored," she said, "under the right partnership." Esha, the enigma. As she did not weep, she did not scheme. Instead, she walked the palace gardens, her steps slow, her gaze distant. When a servant approached, offering condolences, she merely nodded and said, "The night is long, but dawn always comes." But then, something strange. Late that evening, Eshe slipped into the prince's private study. She did not search for gold or documents. Instead, she took a single dagger from the wall, tested its edge, and hid it in her sleeve. Then she smiled. Hidden in the shadows, Prince Zariah clenched his fists. Leora's love seemed real. Nalini's betrayal was clear. But Esha, what was she planning? The grand hall of the palace was lined with flickering torches, casting long shadows that danced like restless spirits. The air smelled of incense and salt, incense for the gods, salt for the tears of the mourners. At the center of the room stood an empty casket, draped in the royal colors of Zaria. The three wives stood before it, each lost in their own thoughts. Leora placed a single white flower on the casket, her hands trembling. "I would give all the gold in the palace," she whispered, just to hear his voice once more. She did not move when the priests began their chants. She did not react when the crowd wailed. She simply stood, hollow-eyed, as if part of her had been buried with her prince. Nalini played the part of the grieving widow perfectly, head bowed, hands clasped. But her sharp eyes missed nothing. She watched the nobles calculating which ones would support her if she claimed the throne. She noted the generals weighing their loyalty. And when the high priest announced that the prince's will would be read the next day, her lips curled slightly. Soon, she thought. Very soon. Eshi stood apart from the others, her face a mask of calm. But beneath her robes, her fingers tightened around the dagger she had taken. As the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, she lingered. Then when no one was looking, she slipped away. Not to her chambers, but to the darkest corner of the palace, where the shadows swallowed her whole. Hidden behind a tapestry, Prince Zaria observed it all. His heart ached for Leora. His blood boiled at Nalini's ambition. But Esha, where is she going? He followed, silent as a ghost, through winding corridors and down forgotten staircases. Then he saw her. Eshi stood before a hooded figure, their voices low but urgent. "It is done," the figure said. "The prince is dead." Eshi's response sent a chill down Zaria's spine. "No," she said, "not yet." The prince's pulse roared in his ears as he pressed himself against the cold stone wall, straining to hear Esha's whispered words. The hooded figure before her shifted, revealing the glint of a blade beneath their cloak. "The kingdom believes he is dead," the figure murmured. "But you doubt?" Eshi's fingers tightened around her stolen dagger. "I know my husband," she said, voice low but sharp as steel. "He does not die so easily." A beat of silence. Then where is he?" Eshi's lips curled into a smile that sent a shiver down the prince's spine. "Watching, waiting, testing us." The prince's breath caught. She knew. Meanwhile, Leora knelt alone in the palace chapel, her tears falling onto the sacred stones. She had lit every candle she could find, their golden glow painting her face in sorrow. "Bring him back," she prayed, voice breaking, "or let me follow him." A priest approached, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The gods do not forsake the pure of heart, my lady. Have faith." But Leora could not eat, could not sleep. The servants whispered that she was fading, as if her soul refused to stay in a world without her prince. Nalini, ever the strategist, had already begun her play for power. She summoned the prince's most trusted advisors to a private chamber, serving them the finest wine laced with honeyed words. "The kingdom cannot linger without a ruler," she said, swirling her goblet. "And who better to guide Zaria than one who shared the prince's bed and his wisdom?" The advisors exchanged glances. One, a grizzled old general, narrowed his eyes. "The prince's will must be honored first." Nalini leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "What if the will changes?" The room went still. Back in the shadows, Ashi turned suddenly, her dagger flashing as she lunged, not at the hooded figure, but past them, toward the hidden alcove where the prince stood. "Enough games, my love," she called, her voice echoing in the dark. "Show yourself." The prince's heart pounded. She had known all along. Stepping into the dim torchlight, he pulled off his disguise, revealing his face. The hooded figure gasped, stumbling back. Eshi did not flinch. "Did you truly think I wouldn't recognize you?" she asked, her gaze burning into his. "Even in death you cannot hide from me." The prince stared at her, torn between awe and dread. Then why play along? Eshi's smile was fierce. To see how far you would go. The truth crashed over him like a wave. Leora's love was real, her heart breaking in his absence. Nalini's ambition was real, her schemes already in motion. But Eshi had seen through him from the start, and now she stood before him, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous: disappointment. You wish to test our love, she said, stepping closer. Then test it properly. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the prince standing in the shadows, his plan unraveling, his kingdom teetering on the edge of chaos. The moment Prince Zaria revealed himself, the fragile illusion of his death shattered, but the damage was already done. Eshi did not wait for explanations. She strode through the palace halls, her footsteps echoing like a drumbeat of judgment. When the prince caught her arm, she turned, eyes blazing. You wanted truth, she hissed. Here it is. Your games have consequences. She yanked free and disappeared into the night, leaving the prince with a chilling realization. She had not betrayed him. He had betrayed her trust. Words spread like poison. The prince lives. But Nalini was already 3 steps ahead. She stormed into the council chamber, slamming the doors behind her. The prince faked his death to spy on his own people, she declared, voice dripping with outrage. Is this the man you would follow? A liar? A coward? The nobles murmured, their loyalty wavering. The general who had doubted her earlier now stood, hand on his sword. And why should we trust you, my lady? Nalini smiled. Because I did not hide. Because I acted while the prince played his childish games. She lifted a scroll, the prince's will, freshly altered. The throne needs strength, not tricks. Leora, frail from days of grief, stumbled into the chaos. When she saw the prince alive, her knees buckled. You let me mourn you. Her whisper cut deeper than any blade. The prince reached for her, but she recoiled. Was my love never enough to trust? Before he could answer, a shout erupted from the courtyard. Eshi had not fled. She had armed the people. Peasants and guards alike poured into the palace, their anger ignited by her words. The prince doubted you. Now doubt him. Nalini seized the moment, rallying her allies. The throne is mine by right. Strike down the traitors. The prince stood trapped between 3 women. Leora, who loved him but could no longer bear the weight of his lies. Nalini, who saw only power and would burn the kingdom to claim it. Eshe, who had loved him fiercest of all, and now fought to dismantle him. As swords clashed and the palace burned, the prince realized his fatal mistake. He had tested their love and lost it forever. The palace was in flames. The air reeked of smoke and betrayal. Prince Zaria stood at the center of the storm, his world collapsing around him, not by the blade of an enemy, but by the weight of his own distrust. The final confrontation. The throne room had become a battleground. Nalini's loyalists clashed with the palace guards, while Aisha's rebels stormed the gates. Leora stood frozen in the chaos, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the firelight. Zoria turned to Nalini first. You would destroy everything for a crown? He demanded. She laughed, her jewels glinting like the edge of a knife. You gave me the opportunity when you chose to deceive us. A true king would never have doubted his own queens. Before he could respond, Ishi appeared beside him, her dagger pressed against his ribs, not to kill, but to remind. You wanted to know who loved you? She whispered. The answer was always, all of us, until you made us hate you. Leora finally spoke, her voice breaking the noise like a prayer. Enough. All eyes turned to her. Leora's judgment. You tested our love, she said to Zaria, but the real test was yours. Could you love us enough to trust us? She stepped forward, her frail body trembling with resolve. A kingdom built on lies cannot stand, and neither can a king. With those words, she turned and walked away, not to her chambers, not to safety, but into the burning halls, as if she would rather perish in the flames than live in a world where love was a game. The fall of Zaria. Eshi lowered her dagger. Go after her, she said coldly, or stay and fight for a throne that will never truly be yours again. Choose, Nalini smirked. Let him run. The throne is mine either way. But as Zarya turned to chase Leora, the great oak doors of the throne room burst open. The people of Zarya, servants, farmers, merchants, poured in, their faces alight with fury. No more princes, someone shouted. No more lies. Nalini's smirk faded as the crowd advanced. Even her loyalists hesitated, their swords lowering, as she stepped forward, raising her voice above the roar. Zarya does not need a ruler who plays with hearts. It needs truth. And then, in a move that stunned even the prince, she turned to the people and said, let the kingdom choose its fate. The aftermath. Leora was never seen again. Some say she vanished into the night. Others claim she walks the palace halls as a ghost, forever mourning the love she lost. Nalini was stripped of her titles and exiled, her ambition left to rot in the wilderness. Aishe did not take the throne. Instead, she helped build a council of the people, where trust was the only currency that mattered. As for Prince Zarya, he wandered the ruins of his palace, a crownless king, finally understanding the lesson he had been too blind to see. Love cannot be tested, it can only be trusted, and once broken, it can never be whole again.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.